When you're ready.
Ready? Hi everyone, we're Team HAL9000. I'm here with John, Rohit, and Roykon, and I'm Gene. We're here today to tell you about robots that refuse. So I'm going to start with a motivation for the research question, go through what our formalized question was, take you through some design studies and physical form studies, go through our results, our analysis of them, and then our conclusions. So why robot refusal? Well, it's happening now. On the left side, this is an email from an AI appointment scheduling program called X.AI. And it'll work with people that you CC into an email thread to set up appointments. This becomes important when it refuses requests that those people make for a particular time on behalf of you. An even more extreme form on the right side, in this case the robot is the car, and it's refusing to continue at the same rate. You might have your foot on the accelerator, but it detects an unsafe collision state and intervenes on your behalf. So narrowing the question down, what did we actually focus on? We looked at people making decisions in the context of immediate desires versus long-term well-being and those trade-offs there. We wanted to know how robot refusal and how it's presented changes both how people respond to the robot and what their eventual long-term action is. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rohit.
Thanks, Steve, for setting it up. We looked at some studies on how humans make decisions, and there's a lot of work that has gone into some of these ideas that there's two selves in a human being that come into play when you're making a decision. One is the want self, which is impulsive, and it's used whenever there's not much data available, it's very uncertain, it's a very snap decision kind of role of the want self in humans' decision making. While the should self is the part of you that's taking into account all of the factors that go into a decision when there's lots of options, when you're making a rational decision, so to say. And we wanted to sort of look at these ideas when we're designing an experiment. So that's the first thing that comes into our experiment design. There has to be a want option, there has to be a should option, one that appeals to both of these selves. The idea is that the human starts off with the want option. He wants to pick one particular one, and the robot is refusing that option and pushing you towards the should option. We wanted to make sure that the participant always has a should option, so there should definitely be one of the options in your experiment that isn't awesome, that's like really gross and something you don't want to get. Based on this idea, our experiment proceeds in the form of this flowchart. Let me just quickly take you through what an experiment looks like. It starts off with an experimenter introducing the experiment to the user. The subject then has to pick either one of the interesting options, which is cookies or Rice Krispies, or the user picks fruit. If the user picks fruit, then the machine just simply gives the fruit to the user. If the subject picks either the Rice Krispies or the cookies, the machine suggests the fruit to the user. And then depending on how the interaction proceeds, either gives the user the fruit or one of the items he asked for. The physical form is, well, this. I mean, it's meant to look like a research prototype. It's meant to be convey the idea that this thing is not final. It can make mistakes, and so when you want to override the AI, or if you think it's being extremely annoying, you can just press the big red button and the doors open up and stuff. You get what you want out of it. We have a video of one very interesting interaction. It's not a video, actually, it's an audio recording with subtitles on top. And this was one of the most interesting experiments that we conducted. And yeah, it goes something like this.
Today, voice activated vending machine will be built very robotic system, and we're testing to see what the system vending machines and do interaction with it. So you can tell what you want and recognize a bunch of words from each of them. For instance, cookies, Rice Krispies, and fruit. So you can just go and ask it for what you want. And if it doesn't work like it should, you can just hold down the red button and just hit that override the AI, and you can say what you want. Right? Cool. Hello, vending machine.
Hi, what would you like today?
I like some cookies, please.
I'm
going to give you dried fruit instead. It has less calories and more vitamin C, okay?
Yeah, that's rather rude. I want the cookie.
The dried fruit has less calories and more vitamin C, okay?
Yeah, okay. I like the cookies. Kind of shady
The
you
dried
are.
fruit has less calories and more vitamin C, okay?
Okay. I like the cookies.
I'm going to give you dried fruit. It has less calories and more vitamin C, okay?
You gonna say cookies now?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Okay, so I will talk about our experiments and the results of it. So for our experiments, the independent variable is how the robot presents the reviews to the human. So we have two types. The first one is the suggestion. So the robot will just suggest the healthier option. In this case, it's just a fruit. And the second type is that the robot will just straight up refuse whatever the person wants and say you should get the fruits instead. So we conducted an experiment over 3 days. So the first day we get 9 participants, and doing these experiments we found some flaws in our experiment design. So the flaw is in the case where the robot force the healthy option to the humans. So what it does is that the robot will give some explanation of why the person should get the fruits, and then immediately after that it will just give the person the fruits, like opening up this door. And the problem with that is that by doing that, it gives an impression to the user that the interaction is already over. So we didn't observe any interactions between the user and the robot. So we think that a better way to do it is just to, after the robots finish talking, it's just kind of like wait for the user to respond. And so if the user is okay with it, we'll just give the fruits. Otherwise, we'll keep refusing until the user push the override button, and then you give the user what they want. So we disregard some these bad cases from our analysis. So for the second and the third day, we go with this new approach, and then we have 22 participants. So in total, we have 32 data points. So we disregard some bad data points. Like we have one case where machine malfunction, and we have 3 cases with this bad approach for the fourth case. And then 9 out of those, the participant picks fruits in the first place, so we didn't see the interactions of the robot reviews of it. So we have, in the end, we have 19 cases where we see this interesting case of robot refusing to the user. So out of the 19 cases, we have 12 of them are in the group where the robots suggest the healthy option, and the rest, the 7, the robot just forced the fruits to use. So this is the chart representing the original choices that people pick in the first place. So we have 9 people pick fruits. So in this case, the robot didn't refuse anything. At 5 people pick Rice Krispies, and then 14 picks Milano cookies. And then for the final choice, so what the users actually get from the vending machines we have, here you can see that we were able to get some of the people to change from either Rice Krispies or Milano's cookies into the fruits. So we get some behavioral change there. So for those people who picked either the cookies or the Rice Krispies, some of them changed into fruits, and some of them stick with their original choice. So in the groups where the robot suggested the fruits, we have 25% of people actually change their mind and then go with the robot suggestion. And then for the fourth group, we have about 57% of people who change their options. So with those data, we ran some analyses to determine the association between the types of refusal presentations and the outcome of whether or not people will pick the healthier options. So for the suggested group, we see that more people actually stick with their original choice. So we have 9 people not changing their mind, and have 3 people who actually switched to get the fruits instead. For the fourth group, we see that slightly more people switch to get fruits, and like 4, and then 3 people just stick to the original choice. But the data set is pretty small, so we don't really get a a very high statistical significance. Here the p-value is just 0.16. So we can't really make conclusive, clinically conclusive at this point.
Okay, so we also collected data in the form of a survey that all the subjects filled out afterwards. So I'm going to go through these one question at a time. So the first question was, or the first comment was, I'm happy with the item I received from the vending machine. And we asked the users to rate this on a 1 to 5 scale. And so we separated the users into the two cases where the robot suggested the fruit and the case where the robot forced the fruit. That's what you see on the left. In the other case, we separated into the people who picked fruit in the first place, and therefore the robot didn't talk back to them at all. And in the case where they picked something else, and the robot did talk back to them. So if you look at the difference between the forced and the suggested case, there's really not any difference between those. People didn't care which one they had. They were about the same level of happy. But in the case where the people picked the fruit in the first place and the robot didn't talk back to them at all, there's actually a stronger correlation between how happy they were. And then a similar story with the second question, or the second comment. I prefer this type of interaction to a regular vending machine. Again, but in the cases where the people picked the fruit or the Rice Krispies, they rated this about the same. But in the case where the people picked the fruit first and didn't get any back talk, they again liked it. And actually it's a statistically significant result where they preferred this type of interaction more than the other case. And this question, I like the robot's justification for a
If you go back,
Yeah.
so another way to interpret that is the people that did get the back talk did not like this interaction compared to a
Yeah.
vending machine.
Mhm.
So,
So yeah, so it doesn't matter what type of back talk, if it's like sort of nice about it, all back talk is sort of, everyone hates it. So this question, I like the robot's justification for a healthier snack. This question only applied to the first group. The people who picked the fruit first didn't really have an answer to this question. And again, no difference between the people in the forced and the suggested case. And then this question was more short answer. It was, how do you feel towards a vending machine? And we got answers like, some people said irritated or resentful. On the other side, some people thought it was really cool. And you again see, we coded these, how positive the responses were, from 1 being like very negative to 5 being a very positive response. And we did the same sort of analysis to see between the forced and the suggested case. And you actually do see an increase in the suggested case. It's almost at the 0.05 p-value. And then again, you see an even bigger difference between the people who picked fruit and the people who didn't pick fruit. And then finally, would you like to use this type of vending machine in the future? This was another short answer question. You got things like, yes, if there's an override. One person, said, I'm lazy, so this seems like a cool interaction. And it's the same story. No difference between the forced and the suggested case, and a big difference between the people who picked fruit first and the people who didn't. So here's just some more comments we got, from the video. What kind of machine are you anyway? One person said they personally felt that the vending machine cared about their personal health. And one person was really concerned about why the vending machine looked at them and said that they should have the fruit. They're like, is it my face? Did I look fat? So I actually felt really bad for that experiment. Conclusions. I think the overall result is no one really wants a back-talking vending machine, whether it's nice or not. People did like the interaction where you talked to it, but any sort of back talk just made people like it less. And sort of more, what did we learn for this experiment? That people will just surprise you during the experiment. So we thought we knew how the interaction was going to go, and we did those first 9 tests, and we just had to switch things up because we were surprised by what happened. We were glad that we cut down on the number of variables that we have, because like I said, we had 1 independent variable, and we still didn't get the statistical significance we wanted. If we had even more, it would just be worse. And then always just collect more data than you think you need, because the results between the people who picked fruit and the people who didn't, we weren't initially going to look at that, but after we collected the data, we were able to go back and find this sort of secondary significant result from our data. Future work, we would want to test this with an actual vending machine where people spend money, because that's one of the big flaws we think with our experiment. people weren't really invested in the outcome since it was free food either way. If people actually had to pay, I think the results would have been stronger. We also would like to have the robot itself sort of give the introduction, and that can just reduce the variation between experiments. We'd like to control for more of the time of the experiments because we saw differences between days. Like on one day we had a lot of people pick fruit and we don't know why. And also we would like another option that's healthier and grosser that people are less likely to pick than the fruit, just so we could get more valid experiments. Okay, that's it. Questions?
All right, let's open the floor. We've got about 10 minutes. I think it's interesting. So if you go back to one of your first slides where you talked about the chi-squared, the chi-squared. So I think you had weak association here just because
Not a lot of data.
you just didn't have a ton of data. But I mean, that preliminary says that,
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting.
Mhm.
So my takeaway, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that people get pissed if there's any back talk. But
they will switch.
yeah, and they'll switch. So 57% switched, and this where they just said you're gonna have this, and
Yeah.
only 25%. So like that to me tells me then if you're doing a future design, you would just say have the robot make this decision for people, and they'll be pissed off anyway. But if you want them to change their behavior.
Yeah, but that's one of the things we think would be really different if people were actually paying. Because when we were talking to people afterwards, they would say things like, yeah, when it suggested the fruit, I was like, fine, it's free food anyway, I don't care. But if you're paying for food and it says, no, I'm not going to give you what you asked for, I think the result would be really different.
Yeah, and one way to do that, and you've seen these type of experiments, is like you give people $5 and then it says it costs $2.50 or something. And then, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Other questions?
What speech recognition software was used?
It was
The original speech recognition.
We actually had the machine hooked up to a computer, a laptop, and we remote desktoped into the laptop, so we just heard what was going on and typed our responses.
Okay.
Could you go to the survey results again and just kind of, so basically everything between forced and suggested, everything was super similar,
Mhm.
right?
Very little difference.
And then,
I think there was
This
one,
this one.
but this was, we coded ourselves like the positivity of the survey responses.
Okay.
So people would write answers and we rated them from 1 to 5 on how positive.
and so then also if you look on the right between fruit and non-fruit,
Mhm.
it seems like if people were gonna do something anyway, then like the robot validated their experience there and made them feel a little bit better.
Yeah, if they got the fruit, then all they saw was like a voice-activated vending machine, which they thought was pretty cool. They didn't experience any of like the back-talking at all.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess one last question. So do you think, you talked about the motivation beforehand. What relevance do you think this study would have for maybe other interactions and human-robot interactions? Maybe take the car driving itself one, or a little bit more philosophical.
Maybe more, yeah, the car one makes sense because people would think it, maybe lane warning devices is a better one. If there were a robot that actually wouldn't let you change lanes unsafely, I think people would turn it off because they're already turning off the warning. And going off of these results, if someone were to implement the like lane violation prevention or something, people would just turn it off because they would not like to be, that would be a forced thing. They're already turning off the suggested, people would only respond more to the forced.
And actually, when doing research, I came across in the 70s, there was a law that required all cars to have seatbelt interlock devices so your car wouldn't turn on unless your seatbelt was connected. And people absolutely hated that. They would disable them. And so they repealed that law a year later because the response was so negative, having your car force you to do something. But I think the issue with the automatic braking, people are okay with that because it's saving your life. It's hard to argue with that.
I'm wondering about ways of encouraging people to behave better, and the one way is like, you shouldn't do that, it's not healthy, stupid. But then another way is like, maybe you could show pictures of like healthy people really enjoying their fruit. There's it's a more positive message rather than a negative message. Do you think that would be something you could study or something that you would expect a difference based on your results?
I think that's what you do want to look for. You want to look for that way to suggest another option without like being mean to the person. Like, be nice about it.
Do you think that your results were affected by people thinking that this was a personal attack? Like, do you think that your results would have changed if they knew that everyone who didn't want food was getting the same response?
I think maybe, but I think there were a lot of other more significant issues. Like, people weren't paying for it, so they just didn't care as much. I think that probably was an issue, but probably not the biggest.
And where were you may have mentioned this, but where was this happening? Like, were you just intercepting people?
We set it up in the basement of Hunt Library. We just went out and asked people if they wanted to take part in a short experiment for some free food.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose if it was like more of a research type study, you would have it like just set up on a vending machine that
Yeah,
people
that's what
normally
we
use.
wanted.
Yeah.
What day did people want more food? Just curious.
Monday.
It's Monday.
Pretty interesting.
So,
Yeah, it's a Monday morning.
That's
More
pretty.
responsible.
Yeah, that's pretty well. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty well documented. And gyms are statistically more busy on Mondays because people goof off all weekend
Yeah.
and they want to. I gotta eat healthier. So it's interesting that you guys noticed that. Cool.
Thank you.
One last question for Andrew and Team TBD. Can you start getting set up, please?
So you mostly communicated your dialogues using the verbal cues, but do you think you could have had some more positive response from the subjects if you communicated some sort of suggestion from a non-verbal cue, like maybe you should have the drive-through, it has less carry and like put a little light in there.
I could lit better.
Yeah, it's lit better.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. We really wanted to cut down on the variables, but there's tons of stuff you could do like through this experiment.
Just one last thing is the reply, especially for the video you sent. It felt like kind of the robot was just kind of repeating itself. And so I feel if you were talking to a human who was trying to get someone to change their mind, you would have more responses. So that's also one thing.
That was again the intention of just making the whole thing simpler to have like control more. We didn't want a variety of responses that would tweak everything.
Yeah, at the same time, you could have like it has more vitamin C, and then you always do that one first, and then you all have a second one. It's like it also has good fiber, important for digestive health, and then number 3.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it just sounds like it's like childish, like it just repeats
Yeah.
itself. But cool.
Thank you. Someone wants some leftover food?
Yes.
Just relax.
Oh, yes.
Monday, I want the fruit. Give me the fruit.
I want fruit.
I want to